Welcome to Value Through Vulnerability. This is a podcast dedicated to putting the human back into humanity. And this afternoon, this morning, for my guest, Cornell Thomas, is joining me from the US, and I am so excited. So Cornell is an author, he's a coach. He's also putting up a fantastic event in London shortly called the Positivity Summit. So please welcome to the podcast, Cornell.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There should be a big round of applause. You know, like once I hear your voice, I'm like, that voice has to get applause at the end of it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, look, thanks for joining me this morning. If you could just give my listeners a little bit more of a background, Cornell. So, sure. What are you up to? What do you care about? And, tell us a little bit about this summit as well. So please rip for the next few minutes.
Sure. So I'm a, speaker, author. I like to say social entrepreneur because a lot of the things that I do are philanthropic in nature. Mm-hmm. So I try to remind people that you can help people and still not live on the street. Like you can actually make money so you can feed your family. My story, Gary, starts when I was about 4 years old. My father passed away from cancer. Bobby Thomas, he was a policeman in Passaic, New Jersey. And when he passed away, he left my mom the task of raising 5 of us on our own with no money. And that was, I think that's what shaped who I am today. Without even knowing, when I was younger, I didn't, because people say like your adversity is your best teacher, right? But when you're 4 years old, 5 years old, you're just a kid. You have no idea what's really going on. But I think through osmosis, seeing my mom become this expert problem solver and focus on the solutions and not the problems really shaped how I am today. So I always tell my mom, like, Mom, if it wasn't for you, there'd be no me. I mean, obviously, nature-wise too, like she had me, but also the way she worked, and the way she grinded, and the way she always had a smile on her face. My mom never came home and took her problems out on us. She never came home and said, I can't believe I'm working 3 jobs and I got kids. And one of my brothers is autistic. So if you have anybody that's on the spectrum, that's even more responsibility. And she just figured it out. So I always have a chapter in my latest book called Tina Thomas the Great. And it's all about my mom. And she's just such a special woman. And growing up and being raised by her, I never thought of it as I was in a single parent household because we had so much love. So what we didn't have materialistic, needs, etc., we had in love. So that's kind of, my mom is the reason I'm here is because of my mom.
You know what I love? I'm already buzzing listening to you talk, because not only just the love for your mother, but I just love what you just said. And I think it's really important for our listeners. You may not have had all the materialist items, but your house was full of love. Mm. Yeah. I just think that's so powerful, because what we're seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing it as well, is this move back to love from this fear base, from this individualization, this hyper disconnectivity, to actually what does it feel like to be a connected singular human race. Like, do you feel that at the moment?
I feel that so strongly. Like you said that, I get goosebumps. Yeah. I get goosebumps because I feel it so strongly. And I tell people all the time, if you think that hate and despair is taking over, then why am I finding Gary Turner? Like, why? Like, how do we connect, right? So you're in England. I'm in New Jersey. We met 2 weeks ago. And now we're here doing a Zoom. So we're finding each other. All the people that are doing this movement of just one race, human race, positivity, love, and not woo-woo stuff, like realness, right? Like, you're a real guy. That's what I loved about you when we first met. Look, this is a real guy. We're all finding each other, and we're in different parts of the globe, and somehow, like magnets, we're coming together. And that's my sign that there's something greater happening here. There's a reason that you're in my life right now. There's a reason that Claude was in my life, Claude Silver, who introduced us. Like, all this stuff is coming. All this stuff is starting to come to the top, starting to rise to the top. And that's what's beautiful in the age we're in right now.
That's just awesome. You're sending shivers back through this screen to me. Honestly, it's crazy. So talk to us a little bit about, so you appreciate you sharing your journey, your early stage journey, the love for your mother and your family. What are you working on right now that's giving you energy, that's really helping you live your mission?
Yeah, so it was funny, Gary. My goal in life was to be a basketball player. And it didn't start till I was 16 years old. I was god awful at basketball, like horrible. And I wanted to play basketball because my cousin, who lived in a different state than me, he was this all-star basketball player. And I didn't have anything I didn't identify with anything growing up. So I didn't really play sports. I hung out with people, I talked to people, but there was nothing I was really passionate about. So when I was over his house one day and I looked under his bed, he had all these newspaper articles about him playing basketball. So I said to myself, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a basketball player. I'm going to be a famous basketball player. I'm going to make the pros, get a contract, make sure my mom never has to work again. Like, that's the mission. So I didn't realize that when you suck at basketball, it takes a long time for you to get better at it. So it was a 5-year journey till I got better. And then I got a scholarship to play in North Dakota. Came back, met my wife there, came back to the States, playing with NBA guys, got a contract to play in Europe professionally. And then a week before I was supposed to go, I ruptured my Achilles tendon. And so that was the first major, my father's passing was the first, but I was too young. But the first major change in my life was when I ruptured my Achilles. You know, I'd say it's the third actually, because finding basketball was the second. I didn't know what to do because I was 25 years old, and I people say like have a plan B. My plan A, B, C, D, E to Z was basketball. And so when that happened, I was kind of freaking out a little bit. And I thought about my mom, and I thought about her coming home when things were hard and then just figuring out the next solution. So I just got out of why me mode and got into like what now mode. And that's such a huge thing for us as human beings. You know, when bad things happen, adversity happens, we're immediately in why me mode. And it's okay to be upset. It's okay to process that and feel that. But at some point in time, you got to say, well, now what am I going to do? Because once adversity happens, it's already happened, right? It's already in the past. If I stub my toe, I can't go back in a time machine and hope that I don't stub my toe again. It's already happened. So now what am I going to do? Am I going to, ice it, or am I going to sit here and cry about it? So I worked myself back, and then I started getting signs that playing basketball wasn't for me. So I started coaching basketball. I started training kids, and I finally realized my purpose, which was helping people. And the reason I got into speaking is because right before my son was born, about 7 years ago, I started to have this shift that it was more than basketball. And we all have that shift where it's like, you know what? I think my mission on this earth isn't what I thought it was for the last 15, 20 years. And I had this big shift, and I didn't know what it was. So I'm thinking to myself, God, like, what is it that I'm supposed to do here? Because there's no blueprint, right, to life. There's no instruction manual. You get a set of rules, you get a set of ideals, but no one says, Gary, okay, this is what you're going to do when you're 15, you're going to do this. When you're 20, you're here, 25 here. Yeah, they'd be successful. No, it's like you have to figure it out, right? Life is trial and error. And I was on Facebook one day, and I'm looking down my Facebook, and it was just the most negative garbage that I've ever read in my life. It was just so negative. And I had a book of positive quotations. So I took a quote out. I don't know why to this day. I don't know why I did it that day. Took a quote out and put it on my timeline, and people started to like it. And even the people that are very negative started to like it. So I said, I have something here. So I was just putting the quote, no picture, no meme, no nothing, just the quote every day. And one day I lost the book, and I wrote my own quote, and people still liked it. So I'm like, well, screw the book. I can do this myself, right? Like, I'll do this. So after about 6 months, a friend of mine said to me, he said, you should write a blog. And I said, that's a great idea. What the hell is a blog? And she opened up this WordPress site for me to start blogging. And every Saturday I wrote a blog, and it was called The Power of Positivity. And then after a couple of months, I said, well, I want to write a book. She goes, how are you going to write a book? I said, I'm going to ask Google. So I asked Google, how do you write a book? And Google told me, and I wrote my first book, The Power of Positivity and Controlling Where the Ball Bounces. And so after I wrote the book, I said, well, I'm going to start speaking and sharing my story, because I'm seeing what my written word is doing. So I can only imagine what would happen if I verbalized this in front of an audience. Again, I didn't have anybody to tell me, this is how you do it, or this is what you should go, or don't spend money on this, or don't waste time on that. I just did it. So I was speaking in front of 5 people, 1 person, 2 people, myself. I didn't care. I was speaking everywhere for free for 6-7 months just to work on my craft and get the word out there. And then because we have these social media so powerful, it started to catch on a little bit, and people started to see what I was doing. And, people started asking me if I can come and speak. And I always tell speakers that are getting into it, I said, hey, yeah, opportunity is great and blah, 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 but you got to work for the opportunity, and you can't suck. That's very important. You got to work for the opportunity, and you got to practice enough so you don't suck. Because if you go somewhere and there's 500 people and say there's 10 other opportunities and you're not good at what you do and you don't work on your craft, guess what? That's probably going to be one of the few times that you speak. So you got to go and bring it. And you got to realize that it's not about you. I don't speak because I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm the man. I speak because there's someone in the audience that might need to hear my message. And time again, and you've been through it too, you're a speaker as well. Time and time again, I've had people come up to me and said, I needed this today. And that's why I speak. And that's why I realize that this is my purpose on earth, to help people. It's bigger than me. I'm just a vessel. You're just a vessel, Gary. Everything that sometimes you'll say things, you don't even remember what you say because it's coming through you, right? We're just vessels. So when you know your mission and you know your purpose, life gets easier. Not saying it's not hard, but the hard part gets easier because you know why you're here. If you're just drifting in an ocean and there's no branches, right? That's when life is scary. But I have a branch every like 10 feet. When something bad happens, I can grab onto another branch. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question. But I wanted to share kind of like a little bit of my, like how I became the crazy person that's in front of you right now.
Well, I'm glad that you did, and for our listeners as well, because there's a couple of things that come up for me which are really, really powerful. The thing you said about it's not about you. So powerful. You know, the societal models, the education system, even our parents, depending how they are, teach us that it is all about us. Yeah. So like, it's not until you hit 18, 19, 20, or me, 42, when you go, oh my God, it's not all about me. Because literally for me, it was 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when I went, nice car, nice house, nice life, job title, and felt empty, literally felt empty. And it's like, so yeah, it can happen anytime. But I just really want to pick up on those points for our listeners. And also I love your comment about life is trial and error. And there's something in there for me around being a bit courageous and being vulnerable enough to not have all the answers.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You said something that's beautiful. You said it happened to me when I was 42. The reason that you're successful, Gary, is because that takes vulnerability, right? To say, man, I didn't find it until I was 42. Because so often we go on Instagram or we go on whatever, and there's all these gurus and stuff, and they act like they have life figured out, and they've always had life figured out. And that's not real, because that's not life. You know, like, you didn't wake up and have life figured out. Like when people say, man, I was born ready. No, you weren't. You were crapping on yourself when you were born, right? You weren't doing it. You weren't born ready. You couldn't even walk, right? Like you couldn't talk. You know, you got ready. You got ready through what? Trial and error, right? I didn't find my mission until I was 35, 34 years old. I thought my mission was something, and I was in love with basketball. I still love basketball, but I didn't find my true mission until 35. So it's not really, sometimes it's not, you know, when you find it, it's if you find it. Because the worst thing for me is seeing people go to their grave and not knowing what their mission is, or not thinking they have one. I feel it in my heart. I feel for these people. Like, you think that you're put on this earth to just consume and die? Like, that's it? You think you're here just to take space? There's so much more to life than that. And it's not changing the world. Gary, you're going to help change the planet. You have this big vision of what you want to do. Sometimes your mission on this earth is taking care of your freaking house, right? My mom had a greater purpose. Her purpose was to take care of us so I can take care and have a big macro vision of helping others. If my mom didn't do her job, I wouldn't be doing my job, right? So don't belittle your purpose because it's not something magnanimous where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just helping millions of people. No, it might just be being a great parent. It might be being a great husband, great wife. It might be being a great school teacher, right? And that kid that's in your class that has that amazing experience, they go on and change the world.
I'm in pieces here. I'm in pieces, man, honestly. For those that listen to this podcast, I get moved semi-regularly because of the types of conversation we have. But Cornell, man, honestly, I'm almost speechless.
Oh, thank you, brother. I love you, man. Thank you. That means a lot.
I mean it. I'm literally speechless because I think what you're pointing to for me is around this. Everybody matters. Everyone's valuable. Every single human being. And this is why I think inclusion is so important, because before we learn to exclude people, we are already included. You look at your children, I look at my stepchildren, I look at my friends, or you look at your family. Yeah. When did we learn that we are not the same and not of equal value? Whoever taught us that? You know, and I just think this reconnection is so important, because we don't want to all consume and die. That comment you just used is so important. Does anybody listening genuinely want to go to their deathbed and believe that they own they've got as much money as they can, they got the best car, they've got the best house, and what's that going to mean to their kids when they're gone?
Yeah, that's so powerful, right? We don't, you know what we do, Gary? We don't learn from the blueprints, right? So you can learn from a bad blueprint and a good blueprint. And history tells us that there's a million bad blueprints we can learn from. And being divided, not being inclusive, not loving one another, letting the media, letting the powers that be separate us by race and religion and sex and all these other things, that does not work. We've tried it. It doesn't work. It doesn't make the world a better place. So at some point in time, you got to change the freaking script, right? At some point in time, you got to write another book. And that book has to be with what we're talking about right now. And people are misconstrued into thinking this is some woo-woo, like fluffy, right? Like guys can't show emotion. I can't tell Gary I love him, right? Because I'm a guy, he's a guy. Like that's going to be showing emotion. That's garbage. You were taught that blueprint. It's an outdated blueprint. You were taught it when you were younger, and it stayed with you. That's not the blueprint that we should be using right now for life. And if you use that blueprint, the world's going to be the same, and it's never going to change. There's always going to be all this death and despair and murder and mayhem and all these division, racism, ignorance that we have right now. So change it. Be a change agent, right? Don't spread it to your next generation. I said one of the worst things that can happen to humanity is when ignorant people breed. It's so sad.
It's so powerful.
Like, stop breeding.
I love it. What would you say? Because you know, we're both into this. We're both in this space. We're having a great conversation. If we've got someone that's sitting at home listening to us right now, and maybe they're 18 years old, they're in a gang, they're struggling to get out of it, they can't see past that's their family right now. Or maybe it's someone that's a single parent and they don't believe that they're worthy. You know, what would you speak to those people right now? How would you speak directly to them, Cornell?
It's funny that you say that, because I'm on both ends of the spectrum in terms of the people that I talk to, right? So I've talked to people that are gangs. I've talked to people that are, my mom's a single mom. I've talked to single moms. I will tell you this, and you hear the statistic a lot. To win the lottery, Gary, in the United States, to win the lottery is something like a 1 in 175 million chance, right? So if I said, Gary, you have a 1 in 175 million chance of me giving you $1, you wouldn't be expecting that dollar anytime soon. You'd be like, okay, I'm never going to get that dollar, right? Now, to be born is something like 1 in 400 trillion. Like, that's a probability. So at some point in time, you have to ask yourself, why me? Why me?
Wow.
Now, if you can't take that statistic, that probability, and say, there's got to be something here, there's got to be something semi-special, then nothing I say or nothing Gary says or nothing anybody says is ever going to change your mindset. If you give yourself time to think about that stat, if you just give yourself a little time, you'll see. Like, I wake up, I'm like, I can have the hardest day of my life. I can have a gazillion things going on. But man, why was I chosen? Why was I chosen? Why was Gary chosen? Right? There's so much power in that. And we tend to forget that. So I would tell you this, like, that gang that you're in, that, man, if you're around do-nothing people, you're going to be a do-nothing person. If you're around positive people, you're going to be a more positive person. It's what you choose to hang around. I hang around these Oh, I'm sorry, Gary. I think I lost you for a second. I'm sorry. I hang around these positive lions like yourself that are just amazing human beings. So how can I not be motivated and inspired to do things? So I would just say, look at your circle and never fill your circle with squares, right? Never fill your circle with pieces that don't fit.
That's so beautiful, and I think the parallels, regardless of where you are in life, regardless of your background, I just love what you're speaking to, because we can use the same example for myself, for my family, for my wife, for my colleagues at work. everybody has got this unique opportunity for a certain period of time to make a difference bigger than themselves. It's something I didn't believe for the last couple of years, but I really hope that everyone hears that statistic is like amazing. And I think it's a beautiful element of clarity to say, what are you going to do, the listener? What are we going to do, Cornell, Gary, and the rest of us, with this limited window in the universe? Yeah? How many billions of years old is this universe? And we've got this really ridiculous speck to make the most of. Why would we want to waste that?
So true, man, so true. We think we're insignificant, right? We think that the ripple that we might cause is insignificant. Well, we're not going to be around here anyway. We'll be gone in 80 years. We'll be, okay, well, my dad's been gone for 40 years, but they named a street after him. They do an award about him, called the Bobby Thomas Service Award for any police officer that does the most community service. He's not here physically to see that. I am. My kids are. Their kids will be. His street sign isn't going anywhere. As long as the earth is here, that street's going to be called Bobby Thomas Way. That's impact. That's legacy. Because someone's going to say, well, who is Bobby Thomas? Oh, man, well, let me tell you. Let's go through the history books. He was this guy. He's only on this earth for 42 years, 41 years. Right? So it's like, you might think it's insignificant. It's not. It's not. Like, you can really make a change here that lasts. I want to make an impact and affect generations, 5 generations from now, 6 generations from now. I want my kids to say, wow, our great was Cornell Thomas. Man, he did some things here. I gotta pick it up. I gotta do some things.
I love that. And and talking about those next generations, you have children, Cornell?
Yeah, 6 and 4.
How do they react to this conversation when you take your kids to, Bobby Thomas Way? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? How do they communicate back to you what they feel inside?
You're gonna get me choked up because the story is like gets me every time. So my son is 6, right? Always talk to him about his grandfather. Always say like, hey, your grandfather's a great man, etc. And so I'm sitting on the bed and he looks up at me. He was about 4 years old, my son Bryce. And he goes, Daddy, your father would be proud of you. Man. I hugged him and I just cried. And it's like, we don't realize what our kids pick up. We never realize it. And it's like, for him to have the sense of mind to say that to me, I just, like I am now. This was 2 years ago. Every time I tell the story, it's impossible not to be choked up. And I just looked at him and I said, man, I love you, B. I said, thank you so much. I said, that means a lot to your father. And my kids are like all our kids, they're sponges, right? So what we're doing is notice. They might not tell you they notice. They might not say, hey, Dad, I see what you're doing, but they see what you're doing. Just like I saw what my mom was doing, just like you saw what your parents were doing. We saw it. We didn't have to verbalize it, right? We saw it, and it stayed with us. I tell my mom, I'm like, what you did, for some reason, you don't think it's anything special. I said some of the things that you taught me without saying a word, I've never forgot, and I never will forget. I pass them to my kids, right? So that's the beauty of having children and them being sponges. They just get it. Bryce is almost old enough now where I can take him to speeches, but he heard me speak. Naya heard me speak. My daughter's 4. She heard me speak a couple weeks ago, and she was sitting there. She was looking at me like this, like, people are sitting here listening to my dad talk. What is this? Right? So when they get old enough, it's going to be such a beautiful thing for them to see what I do and teach them gratitude and teach them, hey, it's not about you. Yeah, you're special. That's awesome, but it's not about you. There's more you can do here. So I would say that was probably the resounding moment in my life a couple years ago when Bryce said that to me in the morning, where I was like, oh my God. Like, it was like, boom, hit my heart so hard. I was just like, okay, I got you, Dad. I see what you did there. Good show. Good show.
Yes, man. Honestly, I'm choked up just listening to you, man. The parallels between what you're doing as, motivational speaker, writer, author, executive coach. But for everybody, no matter where they are, the job role they perform, where they sit in life, even the work colleagues. One of my passions, Cornell, is trying to help organizations and leaders realize exactly what you're talking about is the same for their employees. So let's get away from believing that these transactional relationships at work don't impact them when they go back to their wife, to their children, to their family, to their weekends. For too long now, I believe employees have been seen as castawayable parts of a cog in a wheel that don't have any. And I think exactly what you'll speak to is, I think leaders and organizations need to understand that this is the same. There needs to be a duty of care for their employees, exactly as you're showing for your children.
Yeah.
Everyone's a steward, huh?
Yeah. That's so big. That's so, I mean, imagine that, Gary. Imagine if employees realized, like I said in that article, it's just, you're dealing with other human beings, right? You're dealing with humans. Now, how would you want to walk into the office and feel like, how would you want to be received? You know, if you come in the office and you don't feel love, you don't feel like you're appreciated, you feel like you're just a number or a quota or whatever. If you feel that way, how are you going to give everything you got? But when you go into the office and people are smiling and happy that you're here, and you know, your boss comes up to you unprovoked and says, Gary, get out of here. Take the day. Go hang out. Go see your family. Doesn't your daughter have a recital? Doesn't so? Imagine that happen. And that's global, right? What you just said, that's global. That problem is everywhere. It's in the States, it's in Europe, it's Middle East, everywhere, where people that are in leadership positions, upper management doesn't realize that at the end of the day, it's not about your freaking bottom line. It's not. Because if your business implodes tomorrow, the only thing your employees are going to be thinking about is how you made them feel. That's it. Right? There is no bottom line if your business isn't there. How did you make them feel? So that, I think, Gary, like you going out and doing that work is so big. And I speak to, corporations or whatever. Me and you were talking about the same thing. Like at some point, me and you are going to be going to companies together, tag teaming like
Nice dream.
Batman and Batman, not Batman and Robin. Yeah. But I think that's huge. that's huge. I love that you're doing that mission, because I think when people start to get it, like the real successful companies, they get it, right? Like the Amazons and the Googles and the LinkedIn's, you go in their headquarters, there's ping pong tables and video games and open space, and they're kind of getting rid of the cubicles, and they understand like people need to be happy. I went to Nike headquarters. I spoke in Portland, and I went to Nike headquarters. It looks like a college campus, and their employees have everything. They have like Orange Theory workouts. They have basketball courts. They have the food. There's like a 5-star restaurant. They have everything there, right? It's like they don't want to leave. Now imagine if you own a company and your employees never want to leave. What's the production going to be like? That's common sense to me and you, right? Like we think with this. That's like common sense to us, right? It's so funny how many people where that's not common sense. And so many companies that don't believe what you're saying.
And for you, what gets in the way as we start to wrap up a little bit, and I want you to talk about your Positivity Summit as well. What gets in the way, do you feel, whether it be individuals, whether it be leaders of organizations, what's in the way for you still? If we look at not just the macro view, but the local view, what stops people going from this more reactive, have to be in control sort of mindset and being, to this, actually, it's not about me? What's the bridge we need to be walking people over, Cornell, in your opinion?
We have to reprogram our minds. Our minds have been programmed to think that it's just about us. Our mind has been programmed to think it's a dog eats dog. Listen, there's nothing wrong with competition. There's nothing wrong. I think competition is a beautiful thing if done right? But competing against other humans and knocking people down just to get yourself higher, that's not competition. Right? Now you're getting out of the competition. Competition is, hey, Gary, I'm going to run a mile today. And you say, hey, man, you know what? I'm kicking your butt. I'm running 2 miles today. That's healthy competition. We're getting each other better as we compete, right? So we've been brainwashed into thinking that we can't collaborate and both succeed. We're brainwashed into thinking that there's only one piece of bread. There's not multiple pieces of bread. So that one piece of bread, we have to fight and kill each other for, right? And that's the problem. So it really comes from reprogramming our mind. It's bringing a guy like you into a organization, into an event, into anywhere, and speaking and sharing your story and talking to people about courage and vulnerability. It's bringing someone in like me to talk about what we're talking about, right? It's just reprogramming. It's like you're living in the Matrix and you have to take the other pill. And when you take the other pill, you realize the code starts to come. Like I see the code now. You see the code now, Gary. Before you didn't see the code. Now, last 2 years, you see the coding and you realize there really aren't any limitations. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, there are people that have gone from homeless to billionaires. Money is paper, right? You can always create paper, but you've got to reprogram this.
I'm literally going to watch tonight The Matrix again, because I've never, ever, till you've just spoke about this, seen it in quite the same clarity. It's almost as if we're talking about, do you want to take the red pill of freedom or the blue pill of fear? Which one do you want to pick? And we've been living on the one of fear for far too long.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Beautifully said. 100%. That movie is my favorite movie of all time because it's a documentary. It's a documentary. It's not a movie. It's not fiction. It's a nonfiction documentary. It's what we're living in. And the Wachowski brothers, I don't know how they let them actually do that movie and put it out to the world, because I guess they realized not enough people pay attention anyway, and they'll be focused on the bullet time effects and all the other stuff. But it's a documentary for sure. That movie that's what we're living in right now.
I'm going to be going to sleep this afternoon. I can't do this anymore. Come on, man. You're sending me all over the place. Look, as we look to wrap up and get some details how people can contact you, tell us a bit about the Positivity Summit that's coming up in London. Give us a bit of a lowdown. What are you planning to achieve? What's going on there, etc.
Sure. I was at a Tony Robbins event in 2015. A friend of mine, long stories I'll share for another day, but somehow a friend of mine was able to pay for me to get a ticket. And Tony was like retweeting a lot of my quotes and etc. So I get to this event and I'm looking around and it's like, like music and bright lights and people running around, chest bumping each other and going crazy. And I couldn't get my mind off the price tag. It was about an average 5,000 USD, like price somewhere around like 3,500 pounds. And it's, 5-day thing, 6-day thing. And I'm like, okay, there's only a certain type of people that can come to this event. That's it. You've got to have money. If you have money, then you can go here. If you don't have money, you can't go here. So we can't be talking about inclusion. We can't be talking about togetherness if you're excluding, just by the price tag, you're excluding people from education, which is great education. So I'm sitting there and I start writing. And 2 hours later, I came up with the Positivity Summit. I was supposed to have a partner. And she was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm just writing my purpose. I called it my purpose project. I said, I'm going to do a Positivity Summit. And I can speak all day, but it's not going to be just me speaking. It's going to be multiple diverse speakers, men, women, black, white, I don't care, right? That share their stories. They're not going to be selling from stage, right? We're all going to have a half hour and keep going. And then we're going to have a day after the speakers and the workshops, etc., where we're going to do outreach and we're going to pay it forward. Because you can talk about making a change all day long, but what are you going to do about it? And if I have these people at my disposal, then why not use that and do something where we can help others and show people, hey, it's not about us. We're going to come together and do something for someone else. So my friend was like, well, what are you going to price it at? I said, like 250 American dollars. And she goes, that's way too cheap. She's like, how? That's 8. You're going to have 7, 8 speakers. You have a workshop. You have 2 days. You're going to cater it, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's no way you're going to make any money. I said, well, if you look at the old model and they say charge $1,000 for a weekend ticket and have 5 people, then sure. But if you're looking at what I'm doing, which is going to be growing and making it bigger and bigger and bigger, how about when we have 5,000 people? Is that a little bit of money? Right? How much money? I don't need a private jet. I'm good. I said, when I have 30 people, it's not a lot of money. But we had 30 people the first summit in New Jersey. We had 75 in New York. We had about 45 to 50 in LA. And I'm from Jersey. I'm not from LA. And the one reason I did it in England is I was like, I want to bring this global. I've been in England 6 times already. I've been everywhere. I've been Shrewsbury, Essex, Coventry, Birmingham, Bournemouth, like everywhere. I was like, well, why? I'm meeting all these great people from here. Why not do an event in England? And why not bring it here? And I see different events that are going on there that are 900 pounds, 1,000 pounds. I was like, well, my event's going to be even better, and we're going to charge a fraction of that, and it's going to be, when you leave there, it's not going to be just, okay, high five, bye. one of the things that we want to leave behind, a good friend of mine, she has a organization called Project Kind, where it's a homeless outreach. And she has kindness closets where it's almost like a storage place for food, clothes, toiletries, mentorship. And we want to leave one of those behind wherever we go. So in England, we're going to be looking to partner with a charity or a church or someone that has that already and donate maybe like a washer and dryer or, things to help that along. So wherever we go, there's going to be a kindness closet. So now we're leaving something behind.
That's absolutely stunning. Love it.
Thank you. I'm excited. So we have England and then Toronto and then Dubai. Toronto's in April 2020. Dubai's in September 2020. And I've never had a team. I've never had anybody help me, but a good friend of mine, Lisa Skipton, she has a speakers bureau, right? And Sunny Bird is a public relations organization in Bournemouth. They're both in Bournemouth. And they're like, hey, we want to help your mission. I'm like, great. And then I meet awesome people like you that are like, hey, how can I help? Like amount of people that I've met, Gary, in the last month from England, they're like, how can I help? It shows me that this event is going to be so powerful. And I'm so excited for it. It's going to be an amazing time.
It's, well, just an extra thing, just for the humor, for anyone that's listening to us right now. I also live in Bournemouth. So that's
I love it. When you told me that, Gary, I was like, you got to be kidding me. I said, of course you live in Bournemouth. Of course.
So I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes for anyone to come along and hopefully join up, Cornell. What are the dates? And I believe it's in Chelsea.
Yeah, September 14th and 15th. And ironically, Gary, September 13th in England is Positivity Day.
Is that true?
Who knew?
And it's my birthday.
September 13th. What'd you say?
My birthday, the 13th September.
Positivity Day. Of course you were born on the 13th.
Wow. It just gets better and better, huh?
I love it.
That's amazing. How can people follow you if people aren't already in contact with you sort of via social media or otherwise? What's the best way to connect with you, Cornell?
Email is probably the best. If you're not following me on Instagram, Instagram's at Cornell Thomas 34, Twitter's at Cornell Thomas, Facebook Cornell Thomas. But my email is cornellthomas365@gmail.com, and the website is www.cornell-thomas.com. And if you message me, I will message you right back. I always believe in the power of connection. So if you message me, don't be surprised when you get a message immediately. I had someone message me last week, and she was awesome human being. And she goes, I heard you on this podcast. She goes, I'm going through this, and that. And I go, okay, cool, let's talk. And she goes, well, I'm in New Jersey. I said, great, let's get a coffee. And she just couldn't believe that, she just met me, heard me on the podcast, and then we're getting a coffee. I was like, I'm a freaking human being, just like you're a human being. Who am I? What, I'm too cool to get a coffee with someone? I'm too cool to talk to someone about their problem? Like, are you serious? Right? I was like, so when people reach out, I contact them so quickly. They're just like, oh, okay, hey.
Beautiful. It sums you up as just wonderful. Cornell, thank you so much. And again, a big shout out to Claude Silver for connecting us.
Claude's the best.
Recently, right? And look, I'm really excited to see how your journey goes. I'm confident that people will you'll fill that room in Chelsea, and we'll meet in due course, I'm sure.
This is beautiful, Gary. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, my friend.
Have a great day, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.